Morbidity and mortality are terms often confused with each other, but are completely different. Here's how. Morbidity is known as any condition that is not healthy. This frequently refers to chronic illnesses and age-related diseases. These conditions are known to worsen over time and shorten the quality of life itself. They are associated with the terms non-communicable and communicable diseases. NCDs, also known as chronic diseases, tend to be of long duration and are the result of a combination of genetic, physiological, environmental, and behavioral factors. While communicable diseases is one that spreads from one person to another through a variety of ways that include contact with blood and bodily fluids, breathing in an airborne virus, or even being bitten by an insect. In the Caribbean, researchers have shown that the number one cause of deaths are due to non-communicable diseases. NCDs include heart disease, cancer, stroke, diabetes, kidney disease, pneumonia, and even Alzheimer's, all of which have a greater worldwide morbidity and death rate than all the causes combined. According to additional researchers, there is a 10-year trend in non-communicable diseases mainly in the Caribbean. This was seen between the years 2006 and 2016. There was a high 70% death rate worldwide. Although communicable diseases have decreased significantly within the Caribbean, there are still cases where these diseases are being spread. Some examples of communicable disease include HIV, hepatitis A, B, and C, measles, and blood-borne illnesses. Both NCDs and communicable diseases have harmed human individuals and countries in the social and economic domains, particularly in low and middle income countries.
According to the Pan American Health Organization, the health statistics have shown that patterns of mortality within the Caribbean region have shifted over the last decades. There have been declines in the proportion of deaths from communicable diseases, but increases in deaths from non-communicable diseases. In the Caribbean, the NCDs are the leading cause of death and disability. That's up to 76.8% out of the total in 2016. Cardiovascular diseases were 30.8%, while cancer at 17.2%, diabetes at 10.8%, which are also known as a leading cause of death, where majority of these victims die in their primes before the age of 70 years. The top 4 countries with the highest premature mortality are Guyana at 57.9%, Haiti at 52.5%, Belize at 47.5%, and Suriname at 47.3%. The main cause of mortality and morbidity within this region is known to be the cardiovascular diseases. These represent up 25% of the total disease 60 years and older are faced with today. Another main cause of prevalence of cardiovascular disease is high blood pressure, which are relatively high, especially in men, with 30% of the population over 18 years in some countries, according to the World Health Organization. Additionally, diabetes has been known as another chronic disease that is increasing in the recent decades. There is a 7% relation of the disease affecting people 60 years and over in the Caribbean region, while 15% of the population result in males higher than in females, especially in Caribbean countries. Most recently, we have the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus, where thousands of deaths and suffering was caused all over the Caribbean region. And this can be compared to deaths reported by the NCDs in the same period over the previous years. And this could accurately indicate the impact of the pandemic and the NDCs and the NCDs on the mortality and morbidity in the Caribbean region.
According to the Global Health Observatory of the World Health Organization, hypertension has a prevalence of 41% in Caribbean people older than 25 years. This means that early onset symptoms are common beyond that age. Of the non-communicable diseases that Caribbean people experience, hypertension is associated with cerebrovascular diseases such as stroke and ischemic heart disease, which are leading causes of death in the region, accounting for 51% and 45% of deaths, respectively, in 2017. As a prominent health condition, hypertension is the greatest contributing factor to the mortality rates observed in the non-Latin Caribbean. This is significant since most Caribbean islands are inhabited by more than 90% African descendants. Pan American Health Organization conducted a country-specific surveys using 5 Caribbean countries in 1978. These were Antigua, Barbados, Dominica, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent. And among these populations, hypertension accounted for 6% of their total deaths. In 2017, Caribbean countries such as St. Kitts, British Virgin Islands, and Grenada had more than 35% of their populations afflicted by hypertension. In the same year, Jamaica maintained 25%, while countries like Barbados and Trinidad and Tobago had an approximate 21% of hypertensive citizens. Next, I will speak of diabetes. Diabetes, which results in high blood glucose levels, is an indicator of morbidity because it's closely associated with harmful cardiovascular and metabolic defects. Numerous epidemiological studies have proven that recent decades have seen increased incidence of metabolic diseases such as diabetes, which seem to be linked to the prevalence of obesity and sedentary lifestyles in modern populations. Throughout the Caribbean, diabetes has a prevalence of 9%. However, Afro-Caribbean ethnic groups, which are predisposed to diabetes, have a prevalence of 17.5%, while Latino and white ethnic groups had a prevalence of 12.5% and 6% respectively. Using the ethnic populations of Trinidad and Tobago as a study, Trinidad had a prevalence of 1.3% for diabetes in 1950s, and this grew to 12%, more than 12% in the early 1990s. Currently, the prevalence of diabetes in Trinidad is 10.9%, and in Trinidad, where approximately 40% of the population is of Indian ancestry and the other 40% is of African ancestry, it is important to note that Indo-Trinidadian people had a higher prevalence of diabetes than Afro-Trinidadians. In Jamaica, type 2 diabetes had a prevalence of 1.3% in 1960, and this grew considerably to 17.9% in 1995. Today, 13.6% of Jamaicans between 15 to 74 years of age have been diagnosed with diabetes, and in Barbados, 14.8% of the population has been diagnosed with diabetes. So in the Caribbean, diabetes is a major cause of morbidity and mortality because it accounts for 13.8% of total deaths in the region. And it is important to note that black ethnic groups in Africa share a similar prevalence of diabetes to the Afro-Caribbean ethnicities in this region, and this suggests that diabetes does have genetic links. So I'll speak of cancer next, which is the leading cause of death in the world. According to Pan American Health Organization, the incidence of cancer among Caribbean populations has been of growing concerns in recent decades. Since 1970, cancer has established its position as the fourth leading cause of death, and by 1978 it was the second leading cause of death, and it was accounting for 13% of all deaths. By 2018, cancer and its threat to mortality has increased, and Cancer Atlas has declared that 1.3 million new cancer diagnoses were discovered in 2018. So this shows that presently cancer is still leading cause of death globally, but in the Caribbean it competes with hypertension for the first place spot. Cancer accounts for 660,000 deaths across the Caribbean and Latin American region each year. So, distribution of cancer incidence and mortality rates across the Caribbean region are dependent on social and biological factors such as ethnicity and gender. Within the populations in the Caribbean, men are generally predisposed to cancers of stomach, prostate, lung, and esophagus, while women are predisposed to cancers of breast, stomach, and cervix. According to PAHO, the Caribbean region presents more cases of cervical, esophageal, liver, and stomach cancers than developed countries of North America. Thank you.
There are a number of social determinants that have shaped the levels of morbidity and mortality rates within the Caribbean. Some of these factors include poverty, unequal access to health care, and lack of education are some of the underlying factors of health inequalities. Communicable and non-communicable diseases have both posed challenges for productivity and growth in the Caribbean. As a result, the Caribbean has undergone numerous epidemiological shifts with infectious and chronic illnesses giving rise to non-communicable diseases as the primary causes of morbidity and mortality. Not only that, but communicable diseases have also increased mortality rates. One such disease being the COVID-19 virus that has taken a number of lives in the Caribbean since the year 2020. Some social factors that influence non-communicable diseases are risk factors as well as health-seeking behaviors and opportunities to intervene in disease onset, appearance, and outcome. NCDs are also major sources of pain and impairment, which when combined with direct and indirect economic expenses, creates a significant financial and social burden on families, communities, health systems, and at large the economy. Some of these factors that severely increases the chances of developing NCDs are stemmed in the way people choose their food. While there are genetic factors that may contribute to NCDs within the Caribbean, the way in which people eat are shaped and limited primarily by social and cultural factors. It is safe to say that individuals who have completed high school or a few years of college have death rates that are halfway between those with the greatest and lowest level of education. Thus, each increase in educational attainment is associated with lower mortality rates for both women and men. People with more education lead healthier lives. Each extra year of education lessens the likelihood of becoming a smoker or being overweight. The World Health Organization emphasizes that the obesity epidemic stems from the environment that promotes sedentary lifestyles and the consumption of high-fat, energy-dense diets. In the Caribbean, body size was shown to be a significant predictor of perceived attractiveness, social adequacy, functioning, and responsiveness. Body size was utilized to typecast people into different cultures, but there was no clearly defined cultural norm. Slimness or thin bodies were never regarded as ideal or culturally acceptable in any culture, despite the fact that people wanted to achieve and maintain slimness. Women believed that pregnancy, late-night eating, and contraceptive use were all involved in the development of their overweight status. Men tended to care less about the physical size than women did, and regardless of size, they seemed to care no more. Culture encourages this and makes it much harder to resolve. Because of this, the Caribbean has some of the highest rates of overweight and obesity adults ranging from 18.9% in Antigua and Barbuda to 31.6% in the Bahamas. Alarmingly, the frequency of overweight and obesity is also seen in children as early as 5 to 9 years of age. Obesity is 2 to 3 times more prevalent in Caribbean youngsters than it is globally. With the obesity pandemic among children and adolescents, the future of non-communicable diseases appears bleak, as these young people will be the future working generation, yet they will live with greater rates of these diseases. Another contributing factor causing the increase of NCDs is the lack of physical activity. Physical inactivity is the fourth largest or highest risk factor for worldwide mortality. Physical exercise is essential for maintaining and improving health since it benefits the cardiovascular, muscular, bone, and neurological systems. Age, gender, ethnicity, disabilities, financial levels, and living and working situations all contribute to disparities in physical activity levels. Those who live in high-cost urban locations are more likely to achieve their physical activity demands than those who reside in low-cost urban areas. Higher income groups are more able to pay for gym memberships and sport equipment, as well as to compete in sports than lower income ones. People in the Caribbean consume far too much food for their level of exercise. However, the issue is not limited to the individuals, but the level of support they get to motivate their lifestyles and their lifestyle changes. Social supports can help people to make better eating choices and make healthier dietary changes. Social support can also improve their health by developing a feeling of community and assisting people in becoming more competent and self-efficacious. The family is commonly acknowledged as having a substantial influence on dietary choices. According to research, dietary choices are shaped in the household, and family and friends may be a source of support when it comes to making and maintaining.
The economic domain includes how economic development and income levels, both at the macro and micro levels, are linked to mortality and morbidity within the Caribbean region. As a result of economic problems and inequities within the region, low and middle-income countries generally lack access to integrated primary healthcare programs for early diagnosis and treatment of persons with risk factors compared to persons in high-income countries. Cardiovascular disease and other non-communicable disease patients have less access to appropriate and equitable health care services to react to these conditions. As a result, many persons in low and middle income countries are diagnosed late in the disease's progression and die of cardiovascular disease and other non-communicable illnesses at a younger age, typically during their most productive years. An example of this is in Mexico, Dominican Republic, and Ecuador, where the poorest income quintiles have higher risk of late detection of angina and other cardiovascular diseases. According to the WHO fact sheet in 2016, the poorest individuals in low and middle income countries within the region are the ones who are affected the most at the micro level. Moreover, health spending and out-of-pocket expenses are the highest among these groups. For example, in 2011, non-communicable disease treatment accounted for 48% of out-of-pocket healthcare costs in Jamaica and St. Lucia, compared to less than 20% in the wealthier countries. This therefore feeds poverty, which therefore exacerbates the problem at hand. Furthermore, economic transitions, urbanization, industrialization, and globalization play a key role in the incident growth of cardiovascular disease in Jamaica, which is fueled by an increase in the prevalence of cardiovascular risk factors such as smoking, inadequate intake of fruits and vegetables, and physical inactivity. This therefore gives rise to diabetes, hypertension, high cholesterol, inactivity, tobacco use, and obesity levels within the region. The WHO mentioned that affluent nations have approximately 85% of the resources for treating cardiovascular diseases. However, undeveloped countries such as Jamaica account for more than 85% of the global burden of cardiovascular disorders such as heart attacks and strokes. This is due to the lack of resources and access to new technology and treatment procedures to reduce the problem associated with cardiovascular illnesses. Moreover, approximately 20 to 30% of the adult population in Jamaica is hypertensive. 30% of males and 60% of women are overweight or obese, and diabetes affects as many as 1 in 6 persons, according to the WHO. Moreover, more alarming evidences have surfaced among the young as a result of increased obesity and lack of physical activity. More adolescents are becoming fat at a young age, putting them at higher risk of getting type 2 diabetes and consequently having coronary artery disease later in life. Additionally, the poor have become the most impacted by diabetes, according to the WHO 2016. These lower income groups usually suffer the worst impacts and have the shortest life expectancy as a result of diabetes, owing to a lack of understanding and ability to pay for treatment and medicines. Additionally, as the coronavirus is a common factor in causing mortality and morbidity in the Caribbean region, studies have shown that the virus has placed a greater health burden on the poor than the rich. This is as a result of the incidence of risk factors such as diabetes, hypertension, and obesity that are generally higher among the poor. It was therefore concluded that various risk factors that enhance the risk of severe COVID-19 illnesses are more common in impoverished persons within the region. Therefore, the phenomena of economic transitions and inequality that exist within the Caribbean region is seen to affect health outcomes, where they give rise to risk factors associated with non-communicable diseases. This therefore serves as a contributing factor to mortality and morbidity within the Caribbean region.